This video is inspired by an artist friend of mine who I recently had coffee with. We sat down and she said, I'm ready to give up art. I'm going to go home after this and pack up my studio and I am done. And when I asked her why, she said she'd received a few rejections from exhibition applications she had put in a row. She'd gotten like 3 or 4 rejections and she just thought, that's it. My work is no good. I am packing things up and I am done. So if you are feeling a bit the same way, down about your artwork, lost in the art world, this video may be for you. So in case you don't know me, my name is Fiona and I'm a full-time artist. And on this channel, I take you along on my artistic journey. So we work on projects here in my studio. We go out to see art exhibits. I buy art supplies and share my hauls with you. Basically any art-related content. So if that sounds like something you're into, please like and subscribe. It's one free click for you, but makes a big, big difference for my channel and I would really appreciate it. So I think we're all in the need of a little bit of an artist pep talk, and that's what this video is. So grab a water or a drink, settle in, and let's have a bit of a chat. Let's pep things up. It's 2025, and we need to feel motivated. We need to feel good about our art, and I think we need a little bit of a perspective change. So let's jump into it. Hydrate. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is selling art is not what makes you an artist. I'm going to say that again. Selling art is not what makes you an artist. Making art is what makes you an artist. Now, I think a lot of people get this point confused. So to me, as someone who is an artist and has an art business, you have to learn to separate the two. Because I think it's very easy to equate with, oh, I make things, but I don't sell it, so I'm not an artist. If you're making art, you're an artist. So let's just start there. That is what you need to do to be an artist, is make art. That is it. You don't have to show it to anyone in exhibits or online or otherwise. You don't need to sell it to anyone. You can sit in your space and make art to your heart's content. You are an artist. You make art because you feel obligated to. So for me, it's like a little voice inside telling me, you have to do this. I feel obligated to, the urge to. This little voice gets louder, or that urge feeling builds up inside. The more I'm not making art and doing other things, it just, over and over and over, it pushes and builds and builds and builds until I literally feel like I'm going to erupt unless I make some artwork. Listen to that voice. Listen to that urge. Make the work. Play, experiment. Make a lot of bad art, because you're not going to make any good art unless you make bad art. It's all a part of the process. Making art and being an artist is such a beautiful thing, and you shouldn't deprive yourself of that play, experimentation, your creativity, just because you think you can't sell it, or because you can't exhibit it, or whatever obstacle you've built up in your head. Put that away. Make the work, please. You deserve a life of expressing your unique gift. And I just don't know how to express this any better than, do not deprive yourself of that. Make the work, make the art. You will feel better as a result of it. So the art business part, that can come after. So here's you as an artist on this side. You are making work, experimenting, playing, just having fun with it. And then you have the art business on this side. So that is selling the work, it's promoting it on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever, in your newsletter, the marketing of it, and applying to shows, exhibitions, showing it, That is all the art business. That is separate from you as an artist. And you shouldn't let this drive this. This should drive that. So you make the work, you have the vision, and you can figure out how to market it. You can figure out how to apply to things. You can figure out how to sell it. That leads to that. This does not lead to that. So if you're making something and you're worried about, oh, is this going to look good on Instagram? Is this going to be able to be shown in an exhibit? You can figure out after you've made the thing how to market it. You can figure out how to apply to things. You can figure out how to sell it. That is not what drives the work. You need what's inside to drive what is making the work. I also want to say that the art business stuff does also not determine the value of your work. How many likes you get on it, how many comments, how many people buy it, how many exhibits you get into, that does not determine the value of your work. You determine the value of your work because you know how it makes you feel, and it's something very, very deep inside. And if you're an artist, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and that is what lends the value to it. Let's delve a little bit deeper into the business side of things and get maybe a bit of perspective on that. We'll start with social media. So I was fortunate to attend art school when social media wasn't really a thing. So we were able to be on Facebook, but it was just for organizing parties basically, because it was only your university. People weren't using it to promote their work or anything. Instagram did not exist for several more years. I think we had MySpace, but people weren't really using that as a portfolio in any way, unless you think animated GIFs and all of that and Flash is a portfolio, because it definitely could be. There is an art to a MySpace page. So when you were making art, the focus of the art was the art itself, and then, potentially showing in person at exhibits. But the focus at all was not on promoting it online. It's nothing like what it is now. Nowadays, we are completely bombarded with things constantly. We feel the pressure to constantly post online and share our process, and it is very overwhelming. So what I'll say is these platforms don't determine whether your artwork is good or not. It is a marketing tool. So just because, your artwork might not look good on a small little screen, maybe people need to experience it in person to see the detail, the texture. It doesn't mean that your artwork is not good. So you can always find a way to use these tools to market your work, whether it's taking video to show the process, taking some well-lit photos of it. You can use apps like Smartest that will place it in scenario. There's ways that while you're making the work or after the work is made that you can use the tool to promote your work. And I think for me personally, if I'm recording my process and if I feel that is getting in the way of what I am trying to make, then I shut the camera off. If I feel like I'm spending too much time taking photos and videos and not immersing myself in the work, I just put the phone down, put the camera away. You cannot let the marketing drive the work, and you just have to delight in the work. You have to invest in the work. The work is the most important thing, and the marketing and all of that can come secondary. So to say it very simply, make the work, figure out how to market it. So like I said, if you know you're going to do a process video, pick certain points that, okay, I'm going to take a bit of video here and there, and then I'm going to get back into the work, or just put the camera away, make the work, and then photograph it later or take video later, do a sit-down video talking about your process while showing details of it. There's so many ways that you can market things. Do not let that take away from the art making itself. So now a little bit of perspective on applying to shows. So specifically, my friend had gotten several show rejections and was just feeling so down about the work and feeling like she didn't understand the value of her work just because it wouldn't be accepted into exhibitions. So As someone that has been on both sides, where I have curated a show as well as applied to many and gotten many, many rejections, there's a lot of things that go into curating a show that if you haven't been on that side of it, you may not be thinking about. So for instance, someone might put out an open call for a theme, and then as the work is sent in, you get hundreds of applicants that you have to go through. And so as you're somebody that needs to curate it down to maybe like, let's say 30 pieces, it's really, really difficult. And when I've curated it, it's not because I haven't liked the work or I haven't liked the people. In fact, usually I like a lot more of the work than is able to be curated in. But maybe a theme outside the main theme starts to emerge. Maybe there's a color scheme. Maybe there's a size theme. And then as a curator, it's your job to edit it down and put together something cohesive and presentable. But never have I received like an applicant for a show and thought, oh, this is terrible. I cannot have that in my show, and just written the artist off and been like, I can't believe that. This is not art. That's not how it works. A lot of the time, it's just the difficult job of curating a selection. So as an artist applying, try to keep that in mind, that the curator, it's not because they don't like you and they don't like your artwork. There's a lot of other things at play that you probably don't even realize. So I hope that gives a little bit of perspective to that. Also, if you are in the art business and you are applying to shows, rejection is a big part of it. And what I like to say, me and my friend Maria, we will apply to a lot of stuff, and every time we get a rejection, we tell each other and we're like, that's great. That's one step closer to a yes. So the more you apply for things, the more you put out there, the more likely you are to get a yes. That's just a statistic thing. Just the more you do it, the more you're going to get your work out there. And the other benefit of applying to things is you are getting your work in front of people. So whoever the jury is or the curator, they may have not known you before, and now they do know about you. And they might think, actually, this piece doesn't work for this, but it might be really good for this other show. Art is a long game, and putting yourself out there and getting into the game of being in business, of being an artist, you just never know what will come of things. So the more you're out there, the more you apply to things, the more opportunities will ultimately come. So then the last piece is selling your art. Remember what I said earlier. Selling art is not what makes you an artist. Making art is what makes you an artist. So if you have the artwork and you want to sell it, once again, you can do that. You can find a space to do that. You can find your audience. This takes time though. It's not something that happens overnight, but it is possible and you can do it. And do not discount people you know in your life, friends or family. My very first collectors were friends and family, people that knew me. I had a friend's parents commissioned me when I graduated from college for 4 large paintings in their home. And I remember at the time being like, well, it's just my friend's parents. But to this day, they still collect my work. They believe in the work, they understand it, and they are amazing collectors, and I'm incredibly grateful for them. So do not discount your first collectors if they are people that you already know they're in your life that want to support you and really like your work. You can find many different platforms. So I have a shop on my own website. You can use websites like Saatchi Art. If you're based outside the US, there's Singular. I think there's Tricera in Japan. There's a lot of different art platforms out there. There's ones geared towards like home decor and people looking for things for their home. And then there's ones that are geared towards more fine art. Or maybe it's more like DIY craft what you do, and then an Etsy might be a good idea for you. The possibilities for selling your work online now are bigger than ever before, and there's a lot of opportunities to do so. You can also apply for in-person events, whether that's pop-up markets, craft fairs. You could have a show at your local coffee shop. You could apply for some of the larger art shows in New York. I've done the other art fair, Superfine Art Fair. I'm going to be doing the Artist Project in Toronto. What else have I done? Renegade Craft Fair I just did. So like these are all things I've learned from watching artists here on YouTube or on Instagram and just seeing and applying. And let me tell you, a lot of them I did not get accepted the first time I applied. I applied multiple times, but once you're in there and in the system and they know you and your work, it's a good time to make a good impression and it's an opportunity for selling. But once again, that should not be what motivates the work. You should be making the work and then you figure out which of these opportunities would be best for me. Is it a craft fair? Is it a fine art fair? And you'll kind of start to figure out where your audience is, where do you lie, where are your collectors, and it might not be where you think. So whatever your impressions are about selling art, maybe put that away, focus on making the work, and later, once the work is made, you can figure out where it is that your audience might be to find that. So going into the new year is a perfect time to reset. So let's talk about having an expansive mindset, filling the inspiration well, and stop building those obstacles and start building bridges. And let's just talk about a few things that you can do to put all the art business stuff aside and get back into making the art, being an artist. The very first thing that you can do is clean your space. Wherever it is that you are working, whether you have a studio or it's a desk in a corner of a room, give it a bit of a clean. You might actually discover supplies that you forgot that you had and things that might make you excited to work again. You might discover old work that you're like, oh, I could continue this series. There's a lot that happens when you clean your space. And oftentimes I find like if I just don't have room on my table, I'll just be like, I just don't feel like making work because it's an obstacle, right? So take the stuff off the desk, give it a clean, put your supplies out, the things to make the work, and just let yourself have that clean slate. Get rid of the obstacle, create the opportunity. Going off of that, let's take inventory of our work and our supplies. So as I mentioned, you could see an old piece of yours where you think, oh, either that's maybe not quite done, or maybe you had been thinking about something and then you want to continue down maybe making a body of work, or maybe it springs you off into thinking about a different body of work. Oftentimes for me, going through old sketchbooks or looking at old work that I forgot that I had back in my inventory will reignite something in me. And then taking inventory of your supplies, for me, I have stuff kind of put away in all sorts of different places, and sometimes I don't even realize what I have until I actually sit down and do a proper clean. So taking something out of the closet, trying a new supply, maybe trying a supply that you've had a long time but you just forgot about, having that sort of stuff available and out in your clean space, so you know, like, okay, here's something new I can try. I have the space, I have the supplies. There is nothing getting in the way of you making art now. So you have the space, you have the supplies ready. Maybe you need to fill your inspiration well a little bit more. So here's a few things that I do to fill my own inspiration well. Having some sort of inspiration board or mood board. So this is something I did for a long time in all of my workspaces, where I just had like a pin board, and anytime I would go to like museums, I would pick up postcards. Maybe friends had sent me like little drawings, or maybe we'd done a coffee drawing session together and they'd done something on a napkin. Maybe I was going through a magazine and I found a quote, or maybe an image I liked. Just sort of all those little scraps, just having a place to pin that up and just having that sort of inspirational mood board physically in person that you can look at is a really good way to feel inspired. Another thing I do is I visit museums. You know, if you follow my channel, we go on art adventures together. We go check out places, and it doesn't have to be a huge museum. It could be a small local museum. It could be your local arts council. It could even be your local library. See work in person. Maybe there's an artist that's been exhibiting at a local gallery and you want to get down there and see that. It's important to do, to just fill that inspiration well, because when you're around other work and experiencing it, you can feel the well being filled up, and it gives you lots of ideas and things that you can jump off of, whether it's the scale of a piece, the color, maybe the perspective on something is super interesting. Maybe it's a material you've been wanting to try. Just experiencing work in person is so important for staying inspired as an artist. And if you're somebody that gets overwhelmed easily, then yeah, maybe don't go to the Met. Or if you do, like, go to a section of it, a wing of it. Don't feel like you have to see the whole thing and get overwhelmed. Like, focus in, as I said, a local gallery, your local arts council, just something on a smaller scale to fight the overwhelm, and just, a one-person show, anything, and that will help you feel inspired. So I mentioned going to your local library. They have lots of art books there that you can just flip through for free and sort of take an inspiration that way. A lot of the time, seeing work that people have done in the past can spur you into doing something modern, whether it's looking at, masters that have done still lives and then you want to put your spin on that, or maybe it's landscape artists and so you maybe want to go outdoors and do one, but you want to see how they've done it first. Something to just get the little wheels turning about how can I do something similar and make it my own. And then you can do that also through watching documentaries. Once again, probably your public local library, they might have documentaries on artists. Here on YouTube, there's a lot of artist documentaries. I really recommend the Louisiana channel. They have a lot of artists talking about their process. And for me, sometimes just hearing an artist talk through their process or watching them in their studio making stuff is enough to like send me off. I remember I watched a Gerard Richer documentary, and oh my gosh, I set me off on like doing a whole new body of work, just seeing how he goes about it. And it's funny because he uses like large squeegee to draw color across canvas, and I don't do that at all. But just seeing the use of color is what drove me into doing my own thing. So yeah, checking out art books, watching other artists do it, whether it's on YouTube or a documentary, can really inspire you to try something new yourself. Another thing I mentioned earlier in the video, but it's something I like to do, is going through old sketchbooks. So seeing my old work can sometimes help bring up something for me. So really go through an old sketchbook. You might have an idea in there that you completely forgot about, and you're like, you know what, that's something I could execute on. And it's just a good way to start and a jumping off point. And starting off doing stuff in a sketchbook is a good sort of, way to start getting those ideas out there. So do not underestimate your sketchbook. Have some fun in that. Take it out, go to a place, sketch what you're seeing. Don't sketch what you're seeing. Just spend some time in a sketchbook. And if you're feeling overwhelmed about having the space and all the materials, and you feel really intimidated by the blank canvas, just start in the sketchbook. Take it on the couch, take it to your bed, just lay there, do some, sketching and just work out some of those ideas. And it's a good way to get started in art making again. Something also about looking at past works is I like to paint over old works sometimes. So I might see something where I'm like, a piece of this is working, but not the entire thing. And it inspires me to just work on top of it and add something new to it, bring my new experiences there and bring the past into the future. So just something else to consider if you're open to the idea that working on top of older works is also a way to just like get inspired and get into that art making mode. Another thing that I do is I collaborate with other artists. So if you've been on my channel, you know that my ceramics are collaborative with my mother. I had been painting and drawing, forever. I had never delved into ceramics. My mom in her retirement started doing ceramics, and it really caught fire for her, and she became incredibly prolific and was making. So a few years into her ceramics practice, she said to me, hey, would you want to try glazing one of my pieces? And I had never glazed anything. I'd never thrown anything or worked with clay, so I didn't know anything about it. And we started really simple, where she handed me the glaze and the bisque fired piece, and I hand glazed it, and then she got it fired. And we really loved the results of that. So we worked together on a few things. I think we made 10 things together. And it was just a really nice beginning to that collaboration, where she was making the vessel. She could make whatever she wanted. I did not dictate it. And then she would give it to me to glaze, and she did not dictate how I would glaze it. And we both were just able to come together and collaborate. And obviously now, if you're here and you're familiar with my story, you know that that became a huge part of my art business, is selling our ceramics that we work on together. And now I even make my own. I actually have one right here. So I started coil building recently, and this is one of my bowls, and I've just glazed it. Here's another vessel that I coil built because I found I really love hand building versus throwing. But I would have never ever tried any of these things had I not collaborated with my mother. So we continue to collaborate on things, and now I have a whole new part of my art practice I never had before as a result. So I really recommend collaborating with other artists because you just never know where it can lead. Another example of collaborating is me and my friend Maria. We went to art school together, we were roommates, and we just had a very special artist bond. Like, we really understood each other as artists. And when you find somebody like that, hold on to them. That is a very dear thing as an artist to have. But what happened is she lives in Canada and I live in America. I'd gone to visit her one trip and we were just drawing on the same piece of paper. She had like a large piece of Bristol board and we were drawing on the same sides, and then found we were meeting in the middle and our marks were intertwining, and we were both like, this is something interesting and cool. And then next thing you know, Maria, after I came home, she mailed me a couple of small drawings and said, hey, why don't you draw on this and send it back to me? And we ended out making drawings and we would mail them back and forth, and it became a bigger collaboration, which we now call the Shared Energies Project. But it's just one of those things where we kind of set the rules ourselves, where we were okay, you could go over each other's work, you could cover things up, you could whatever. But if you collaborate with another artist, just, come up with some guidelines for yourself, where the boundaries are. Maybe one person does one thing, like my mom throwing the vessels, and then I add the glazing, or like with Maria and I, we both draw and we're okay layering over each other's work. You get to determine the rules, and it can just be a really fun way to get inspired and out of your own head and out of your own practice and into making art and with somebody else. And then the last thing I'll suggest is scrolling on social media. Be careful with this because it can really easily turn into a doom scroll. So I would say just like be intentional, look for things that you are thinking, oh yeah, that could be something I apply to my own work. And maybe it's a format, maybe it's a color, and just getting those ideas. I love Pinterest. On Pinterest, I have like a whole art inspiration board. I have one for like patterns, I have one for textures, I have one for installations. I just love it as a platform for sort of bookmarking ideas. But Instagram is good too. I save a lot of posts that I think, oh, I could like put my own twist on that, or maybe I like this one little corner of this painting I saw from someone else and I want to blow that up and make that something bigger and in my own voice. So social media can be good for inspiration, but do it intentionally. So I hope this helps. I hope it gives you a bit of a boost. I hope you feel a little bit pepped up now. You have some ideas to get back into your art practice and being an artist, because remember, making art is what makes you an artist, not selling art. So if you want to have an art business, you can figure out how to market and sell and exhibit your art. But to be an artist, you need to make the work. So let's make 2025 a great year of making art. And I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay well and stay inspired, my friends. Bye.